For regulators and also the government in Germany, sometimes the best is to do nothing when it comes to investing in renewables. And we should leave it up to like the state level and also like to the companies, because I believe that like companies always have like an interest in lowering their energy costs and also driving innovations. And this is not something that we can force like on a centralized state level, because the state never has like all of the information available in the market and therefore cannot decide where to push things the best. So whenever like a state intervenes, and especially like with regulations, usually the outcome is not like the wished outcome, and just because you intend to do like a nice policy or like a friendly policy doesn't mean like that the outcome is already like the same.
Crispy Perspectives. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the season 2 of Crispy Perspectives. In this season, we discuss the future of energy. I'm Sahil, your host for the evening, and today we have with us our energy connoisseur, Kedar. Also, we have a very special guest with us, Clemens. Clemens, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Clemens, could you give a short introduction of yourself for all of our listeners?
Yes, I can give a short introduction about myself. So I'm Clemens Behrendt. I grew up in Germany, like in the state of Baden-Württemberg. For everyone who doesn't know what that state is, it's like the place where they produce the Mercedes-Benz cars. So that's where I am from. I'm into the hydrogen industry since 1 year. I'm working at a company called Delphi Data Labs. We are like a startup for market intelligence, and like all of the statements that I say here for today are just my personal statements, so not like impressing like any form of opinion for my employer here.
Thanks for that introduction, Clemens. Really great to have you here. So today's episode is all focused on hydrogen and the future of hydrogen in terms of our energy futures. So before we talk about energy futures, we have to talk about the present state of energy. And today we see that energy has a lot of inclination towards nuclear. So what follows the best, hydrogen or nuclear?
So that's a really good question. It's also the reason why I got into hydrogen. Before hydrogen, I worked in the finance sector, and also I'm an economist, so that's more of my background. And in Germany, we have the so-called Energiewende.
The Energiewende, or energy transition in English, was a movement founded and started in Germany in the 1980s with the goal of transitioning the German energy mix to be dominated by renewable energies by 2060.
Or let's keep it short and simple. So Germany is like, I guess, the only country which is doing like a nuclear phase out or has already completed it. So we had like a lot of great working and super technology advanced nuclear reactors, but we decided to go like a different route. So now it seems that like hydrogen is like the big thing. So just to put it like in comparison, so we already have like over 300 or more hydrogen projects in Germany, and like given if it's size of like 80 million people, and when we compare to like China, who's like the world leader in hydrogen, I would say they not have like that many projects more. I think it's like 400 or 500 something. I would need to check it. But just like to put it in perspective, so hydrogen is like a really big thing here. But what we will also talk about, it's not the solution for all use cases, and also for like making the country energy independent, what is also like a huge topic.
Clemens, it's fascinating to discuss about this topic, right, of hydrogen, especially also from the European and maybe even more specifically the German point of view, because Germany is doing something that is quite radically different when compared to other countries. And you did mention that Germany has shut down nuclear and is moving towards hydrogen. and we'll get into the details as to why and where it is happening and how it is happening. I want to assume a scenario, or I want to assume a story, like assume that you were the energy minister in Germany, and you were given the option to shape or reshape the energy constitution or the energy mix of Germany. Would you also follow the current strategy that's being taken by the country, or would you do things a bit differently?
I would definitely do things differently. Also, like as an important note, I would not talk that negative about any other country, but I guess I, as a German, are allowed to criticize our own strategy fully. So on one side, maybe let's start with something friendly. Of course, I'm well aware that like the waste management of nuclear is like super expensive. Also, you need places where you can put it. Germany is super small. We don't have like that places where we can easily just store it. So of course, in the long run, nuclear can be like super expensive. But let's assume I would have to handle like the politics about like our energy. I would not do much and not intervene much, because usually it's when the state says that they know everything about the market or have all the information, like a central planner. Usually it's not that case. So what made Germany really strong in the past, that we planned a lot of things like on a really small decentralized level and not like centralized, where we try to push for all of the renewables. So like, to put it in a nutshell, everything what we did in Germany, we said, okay, we want to do a change. So let's give an example. You move out of your house, you place all your stuff on the street, sell your old house, and then your wife or husband or whatever is asking you, okay, but where are we moving? And you just say like, I don't know. So we said, okay, we want to move, but we didn't make a plan like how we do this transition. So we just said, let's do the transition. Change everything, get rid of all of our old stuff, but we didn't really think about like how to replace that. So that's like the issue what we did. And also in the communication there was like a lot of panic, because this all started like with Fukushima in Japan in like 2008 or something. So I would also mainly focus on like the communication part, instead of like spending the taxpayers' money for like some fairy tale wishful thinking of like an energy transition.
Great. So I think your approach looks a lot more holistic and encompasses more number of stakeholders to get an active benefit. So it's more like a win-win situation. But when we talk of a win-win situation, can we also understand what is a win situation for hydrogen and what is a win situation for other renewables like nuclear as a source of energy?
Yeah, we can also put like wind and solar into this example. So there will definitely be use cases where hydrogen can make like a lot of sense. But like when I see like our green party in Germany discussing hydrogen for heating, and now in the city of Mannheim, they just said like, okay, we get rid of our gas network until 2030. We don't build any replacement. That's just like the wrong approach, and where I'm like almost furious how we can go that direction, but just brings us back to what I said previously, that we wanna move to another house, but we have no clue like how to do that.
I hear the exasperation in your voice, Clemens, and it seems as if that there is an objective that is being set. That is basically the why we want to achieve what we want to achieve, but there is no clear plan as to how we want to achieve that, if I understood you correctly.
That's right, objective, and they say we want to achieve this objective, whatever it takes, even if it means destroying our own industry, getting rid of jobs, and not achieving like any income, like reducing our GDP growth. So that's like this whatever it takes mentality, and that's also like typically German, and we also have like a saying for that, am deutschen Wesen soll die Welt genesen, how to translate that in English. I would say in every extreme, Germany always want to go ahead and be like the most radical, even if it means like in positive things or like in negative things. So people here have like a tendency for that.
Okay, let's be optimistic here. Let's assume that Germany did find a reasonable way in order to go ahead with building up hydrogen infrastructure. And let's also take it one step further and say that all of the calculations have been done in order to assume that hydrogen can form the majority, at least in terms of building up, let's say, for example, enough renewable energy, which then gives us a big surplus to then use hydrogen as even a transport or a storage mechanism to then shift generation over to periods where consumption is higher. Is this financially also making sense? Or is there going to be a massive investment that is needed in order to achieve this?
So there's definitely a massive investment needed. I would also say what we need to do way better is like the marketing of these investments, or especially of like hydrogen or all renewables. So that's also like what I'm missing a lot. They always say like, okay, we want to save the planet, but in the end, the investors only care about the return on investment. And instead of like focusing on this aspect and like trying how we can make private investments like super attractive, that we also get more investments again into Germany, they always talk about like how they can spend money which they collected from the taxpayers. And this is also not something with what you motivate people. And of course we can say like, okay, we want to save the planet, but we need to be realistic of the size of Germany. And just because we go into one direction, when we look outside of Germany or Europe where like the world is going, we cannot like change it completely. And like only by ruining ourselves, we will not give like a great example, and then you don't have the buy-in from the public later, like in other states when they see it like how we did it.
Clemens, I do understand that this sounds very convincing, but it would be very crude for us to assume that this strategy is probably flawless, right? So if you were to come up with probably a strategy, how would you do it differently?
So how would I do the strategy differently? So as I said, like Germany is like really like a high-tech country. So for no matter what you want to build or what you want to do in business, so we need to make sure that we like reduce the taxes for the companies, and on the other side, of course, that we invest less by the state. Because when we ask for less taxes to be paid, of course the state can invest less. So that like the capital can like the market can decide again where the capital floats, and we not just like force it because of our wishful thinking.
And I mean, we are seeing it globally, right? We are seeing that countries are massively subsidizing technologies in order for people to buy them and then use them and then, of course, spread the information, right? So for the masses to then be allowed to make use or see the value in these new technologies. We're seeing one major player in the global south, and we're seeing one major player in the global north, which is the legacy superpower of the USA. So when you say that maybe investment should not flow from the national side, what do you mean? Because if we want to even look at hydrogen as a technology, I think no one will be willing to accept it in the beginning unless they are heavily sponsored or subsidized, right?
Yeah, that's right. So what you're saying. So in the end, the consumer only cares about the price. But if there's not like the technology ready that we can offer it like to a good price, or we don't have like that much renewables, I mean, like I'm not saying that we don't have enough renewables, like on this topic, Germany is already doing like a great job. But overall, if we try to push innovations and just give money that we select to certain companies, it will just give us like nonsense outcomes, because like these companies are then have like a competitive advantage because they have better lobby against smaller companies who cannot like pay that. Then in the end we also have like a lot of regulations, then only the big companies can like align with that regulations and pay the extra stuff what they need for it. So we should also like take care of these things, that we have like a good competition between like a lot of small players who try to push forwards innovation. And as the saying goes, since you mentioned the USA, usually it's like the USA innovates, China is following, and then like in the end Europe regulates, and we need to get away from that in Europe we only think about like regulations instead of like really innovating. And if there's like a company who cannot like stay in the competition without any subsidiaries, then maybe like the innovation is not that great.
That was a great point that you made, especially with US innovating and then China pushing forward and then European just regulating it. This means quite simply that if you were to again, let's say, set up hydrogen, or at least not, if not for now, let's say for the short term, medium term, long term, as a part or as a significant part of the energy mix, you would then focus right now on spending more on research and innovation, right? Developing hydrogen, making sure that on one side it becomes much more efficient and on the other side it becomes much more cost effective as an energy technology. Is that what you would do?
Yeah, partly, I would say. Because like during the summer, we already produce too much energy, and during the winter, we have like the issue that we need to import energy from other countries. So definitely I would focus a lot like, okay, what can we do when we have like renewables during the summer producing like a lot of energy, and then we need to think about, instead of like just selling the energy for like super cheap, that we then should of course focus on things like producing hydrogen. So for that proposal, definitely has a place to be.
Clemens, it would be really imaginative of us if we were to think of it as an energy transition at scale. That is the scale of probably an entire country's grid. But if we want to do it at a smaller scale, that is either at a community level or at a smaller grid level, probably for an island, etc., I think if we were to then bring in the renewables angle, nuclear doesn't stand a huge ground because the requirement of space as well as the kind of risks that nuclear has is very huge. So for microgrids or for say localized grids, I think hydrogen would take a larger chunk of the market. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that definitely sounds right to me. So I'm also not saying like nuclear is the solution for everything. In the best case, you can already avoid nuclear. And like in a perfect world, we would just go to renewables and then have like a hydrogen economy where we just utilize all of these renewable energy and find a way to store it, especially for smaller islands. I think there's then usually the case you just need to look how you survive and keep the economy running. And the thing as we have with the energy transition in Germany, it's really something what should only be for like big economies, which countries. So what I'm also seeing like a big flaw, especially in Germany, is like that we grew not in an environment friendly way. Now we have like a big economy, and now we want to teach smaller countries like, hey, you are not allowed to grow like in a not environment friendly way. Because this thing with saving the environment, of course it's super important, but in the end people need to feed their families and stuff and need to fulfill like the basic needs. So always saying like, okay, we want to have like the energy transition now or like until this date and otherwise the world will end, that's definitely not true. Of course we need to make like an effort, but not like with this whatever it takes mentality and then like ruining ourselves or ruining smaller countries and hindering their growth and income.
Marvelous. I think the way that you've put it, that it's not just for us or for any country specifically to take up something and then advise countries on it, because each country has a specific or a unique set of demands to which then they cater to, including the energy mix or the energy sources that they choose to work with. And I think in this manner of speaking, awareness plays a very, very large role, right? The more number of people or the more number of businesses or the more number of experts that you have on a domain, the better your chances are in becoming better at both procuring, both generating, both manufacturing and also consuming it. Coming to hydrogen again specifically, we see that hydrogen has a lot of potential for impact generation, but are they aware of hydrogen and its potential impact on the future of energy or any other applications?
I don't think so. And I also see the big issue, especially in Germany, since we have such a decrease in trust in politics. I have the feeling people sometimes can smell that like hydrogen is also pushed a lot like by the oil and gas industry, because they see that this renewable trend is coming. So they want to have like a good way out of it. And what like many people are not really aware of, that like the most hydrogen that is used right now is not like from renewables, aka green or green hydrogen, how we call it. So that's like a big missing part in the communication. What I also highlighted in the beginning of our chat, that like communication is like really the key. And of course, having green hydrogen, or clean hydrogen would be always the best. But where I'm currently seeing this going is that then in the end we will just use like blue hydrogen from natural gas and like not renewable sources, build all of this infrastructure with pretending we are saving the environment, but in the end there's not much change and it's just like the same but with other infrastructure paid by the taxpayer, not with the outcome that was promised of like a hydrogen economy that is like saving the environment.
Which means that we cannot look at hydrogen, at least middle term, as a form of energy security. Because when we think about hydrogen, one of the big points that comes to my mind is that, okay, countries that do not have enough resources to go around with can use hydrogen as a form of security, especially to shield themselves from price shocks.
Yeah, maybe for countries in like Africa or South America, that could be the case, but I would need to look into it in more detail. But for Germany, I don't see this, especially like for our heavy industry. What we had with steel, we made like a lot of attempts for producing like green steel, but there were like so many setbacks. I don't think we can like do a good hedge on it right now. And also, as I said, with this energy transition, we are getting like so focused on saying like, okay, it needs to happen until this date or time, and this should not be the case. Of course, we need to do something, but saying like, okay, but with this whatever it takes mentality, but we have right now, I think we will not have like this outcome what we wish. And in the end, if we don't have like this outcome and we have like a decrease in the growth of the economy, people will be less motivated in the long run for this environment friendly things, and then it's way harder to convince them. So maybe slowing a little bit down, looking that we keep like the basic needs of a country together. And once we have the basic needs secured, then of course we can look at like this higher fulfillment of having like a CO2 neutral economy.
Clemens, that's really a convincing statement. It is compelling because it also encompasses countries at a level where they are still growing. But countries like these would need energy that could be probably in their own control in terms of the costs. For example, if we talk about the non-renewable sources like coal, etc., the costs may not be in their control. But if we talk of hydrogen, if it is green hydrogen or even blue hydrogen, in some sense, the costs can still be in the country's control. And in some way, if they are using efficient modes of generating hydrogen, the cost of hydrogen can also reduce, right?
Yeah, we have some countries which can already produce like hydrogen like around $1 or $2, like as Namibia. So these are like outstanding examples. So why do they need to go to coal or like any other energy source? Maybe they use it. I didn't look so much into detail into it, but it's just like one example. But there you always need to look on the circumstances. So when they have like a lot of wind and solar, perfectly. But we cannot like make the same assumption for every country.
Understood. Let me shift the direction of the show for one last exciting segment. And we bring you back to the same scenario, Clemens. Assume that you are now the energy minister of Germany. And we've seen that hydrogen has a lot of uses. Hydrogen has a lot of potential. Maybe not right now being a big part of the energy mix, but probably in the future. And this question is sort of really personal to me because I work in product development. And one thing that they teach us about a product is that when you find a product, try to go for market fit. If you don't find market fit, try to pivot. Try to see if the same product has other applications that you might not even have thought about before. And so I wanted to ask you, if you were not going to use hydrogen now as a part of your energy mix, what other applications would you use it for?
Yeah, so the question with hydrogen is always when we have excess energy in the summer, how can we store it? So there, of course, hydrogen is one example. Another example, what we could do is like Bitcoin mining, because Bitcoin mining, we all know, you put in like some energy and you get some money out. So we would need to decide what we want to do, like with this excess energy. Do we want to produce hydrogen? Then we need to think about the storage, the transportation, and also like the off-taker. What could it make like way more expensive? And the other case would be like, okay, we could do like mining of Bitcoin, where we don't need to think about like the storage, transportation, because everything is digital. So we just get like a return back there and then can reinvest the money. So this would be like a question where we would need to look into it. And I think this idea gets way more traction. So for instance, Shell has like a project in the North Sea in Germany where they are like looking for oil and gas, and there the excess energy they're already using like for crypto mining. And this would also align like with my statement that also like a government, there should be like innovation or technology neutral what we are not, because we are saying like right now hydrogen is the solution for everything, nuclear is evil, and everything what uses like a lot of energy, like be it like crypto mining, AI or whatever, is bad. But what we always forget, there's like not like any country or like which country which is not like energy intense. So using like a lot of energy is not like a bad thing.
With that, Clemens, I think we have come to the end of our episode. We had a groundbreaking conversation which was very convincing to us that there is a positive hydrogen future. It would just be positive if we think correctly and act correctly. We have discussed at length about the hydrogen economy, the best governance practices, and how the current governance practices could be done better. We have discussed the current state of matters for hydrogen and the way forward as well. And we have also discussed the right ways to finance as well as the applications of hydrogen beyond energy as well. I think I should thank you for taking time out for this episode. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And for all of our listeners, thank you very much for joining in. Be sure to share this episode with like-minded energy enthusiasts, and don't forget to join the Perspective Club. Like and subscribe to our show, and we will see you soon on another episode of Crispy Perspectives.